Hello guys, it's me Urahara, and in this video I will talk about the 8th most strongest Shikai in Bleach. And my selection for this list is different from the list I choose for the 13 strongest Bankai in Bleach. In my opinion, the issue is different when we talk about the Shikai, because some of the Shikai is just a warm-up to the true power of the Zanpakuto in the Bankai phase, especially when we talk about the Bankai that are an extension of Shikai in terms of the natures of abilities. Also, there are some Shikai that are more powerful as an effect because of the Bankai's ability is not special or difficult to launch. Therefore, saying that characters X has a stronger Bankai than character Y does not necessarily mean that characters X Shikai will also be stronger than characters Y's Shikai. Also, some Shinigami we notice that they prefer to use Bankai instead of Shikai because the Bankai gives their techniques more power at the Bankai level. Perhaps the most striking example of this is Toshiro. Almost the same techniques that are found in his Shikai are the same as in Bankai. The only difference is the amount of ice. So that's why we see Toshiro relying on Bankai more. Of course, I'm not talking here about the adult form, but rather the normal Bankai version. And also, everyone who relied heavily on Bankai, they found themselves in a trouble when the first Quincy attack took place, because the Quincy forbade the Shinigami from using Bankai, and the ones who depended on it a lot were the ones who was stolen from them their Bankai, like Toshiro, Piyaki, and Sajin, and that's why I decided to focus primarily on the Shikai, who had a big role and achievements in the story. Piyaki is like Toshiro, one of the characters that were heavily dependent on Bankai, and as I said in a previous video, a character's dependence on using Bankai a lot does not mean that it's weak, but rather shows you how the character has reached a good stage of communication with the Zanpakuto to the point that it has become easy for it to use Bankai and develop several techniques in that stage. But at the same time, the total dependence on the Bankais makes the Shinigami not interested in developing the Shikai and make it more powerful, and this is what Piyaki understood very well when his Bankai was stolen by Ace Note. Piyaki admitted that his stolen Bankai was one of the good things that happened to him, and because of that he reconsidered his relationship with Senbonzakura in the Royal Palace, and thanks to his intense training in the Royal Palace, Piyaki upgraded his Shikai and brought it to a level equal or greater than the Bankai strength of his old version before going into the Royal Palace. We all saw how powerful Senbonzakura was when he attacked Ace Note. The latter, due to his great strength, thought that Piyaki had attacked him with a Bankai, while that was a light wave of Shikai. But in general, Piyaki's Shikai after the Royal Palace has become in another level of power. Benihime. Kisuke Urahara is one of the characters who relies heavily on Shikai for most of his interventions in the story, especially since his Zanpakuto is a Kido type, and Kisuke loves to fight using Kido. So Kisuke is the most person you can enjoy his fights if he uses Benihime at the level of Shikai, a semi-complete Shikai. It provides Kisuke everything, a blood armor defense, and imagine with me that the first Getsuga Tensho of Ichigo was arguably without restraint from the Osan. Benihime's shield was able to fend off that attack, and look at the side effects that it left behind. In attack, Benihime gives Kisuke the advantage in directing and focused his attacks on the opponent, and even if he has to get close to the opponent, Benihime implements a very powerful technique, like the Shibari technique that he implemented on Aizen Sasuke. And I really wished if Kisuke's Bankai, as I said in a previous video, was an extension of these techniques but at a great level and new techniques. And we move to the Shikai Nuzarashi. I made a video recently about the reality of Nuzarashi and Yachiro's relationship with it, but regardless of the mystery surrounding this topic, the main and the clear fact about it is that Zaraki in chapter 577 was finally able to activate his Shikai, after everyone, including the characters from the story itself such as Piyaki, was thinking that Zaraki, like Ichigo's Shikai, was in a state of constant release. And imagine with me, throughout the story, Zaraki defeated many enemies in a sealed and inactive Zanpakuto. Yes, indeed, the Shikai Nuzarashi did not give Zaraki anything special in terms of techniques, but Zaraki does not need that, because all he needed was a sword that could absorb his monstrous power. and therefore it becomes easy for him to catch anything. And imagine with me, in one hit, listen carefully, one hit he made the meteor of Grimmy into crumbs. What a destructive power does this Shikai possesses. And Zaraki in this scene was about to split Toshiro in half if he hadn't restrained himself at the last moments. So even at the level of the Bankai, almost the same principle remains in Zaraki's fighting mechanism, providing him with more power to slash his opponent no matter how strong he is. So when we talk about Nuzarashi as a Shikai, we are talking about a lethal weapon that reflects the character of Zaraki. And we move to one of the most amazing and powerful Shikai in Bleach, Kyokukatsu, the Shikai of Shunsui Kyoraku. I already talked about this Shikai in a video of the most creative Zanpakuto in Bleach. And besides of that, Kobo did a great job in shaping the abilities of Kyokukatsu, but also showed his strength through all the games we have seen in which Kyoraku fights his opponents. And if you have noticed, all of Kyoraku's opponents, Stark, Lily Barrow, and even the Shanaita Roberts share a common point. Forget about the guns, we all know this. I'm talking about something else, which is experience and intelligence. Because Kobo knows that if these two things is not available in Kyoraku's opponents, they will lose the battle in the first steps. Like what happened with the poor Shadow, although he is just a human. But Kyoraku's games, although deadly and powerful, are based mainly on cunning and intense focus to quickly understand and adapt to their rules. And these things are so hard even for an espada like Stark, and made Lily Barrow launch his Volt Standing. And now to the Great Four. The beginning will be with the legendary Shikai, Kyokukatsu. Frankly, this Shikai's ability is one of the abilities that frightened me the most throughout the events of the Soul Society in the Arankara arc. Complete hypnosis. With this ability, Aizen was able to carry out all his infernal plans, manipulate everyone from the strongest to the weakest. And the manipulation of victims' five senses is terrifying, and it shows the big difference between Aizen's Shikai and Hiraku's Shikai. The latter, as described by Aizen, is merely an optical manipulation that relies primarily on reversing directions. But when we talk about Aizen's Shikai, we are talking about complete hypnosis that controls all your senses, as if Kyokukatsu creates for you a virtual reality in which you can live your whole life without knowing that it's just a virtual reality. What you see and what you hear and what you smell and what you taste and what you touch, it's all under Aizen's control. So I consider Aizen's Shikai ability to be one of the strongest that made Bleach story so interesting. And now to the third Shikai, Ryujin Jakka, the Great Fiery Shikai. This Shikai and the other two share a monstrous Ryatsu power that transforms this Shikai's abilities to another level of power. Ryujin Jakka as a Shikai can be considered a mini version of Zanka no Tachi. Even when the old man wants to release the Shikai, his range is wide and destroys his surroundings, and he did that against Okitake and Kyoraku or with Aizen. On the other hand, he can direct several focused and specific attacks, such as the technique which he besieged Aizen, or the technique with which he cut Ion, and with one slash he was able to kill Driscoll, without mentioning that he was merciful in his attack on Haliba's followers. And this can be also said about the trio Ace Note, Nanana and Busby, although it was the latter Busby who saved them by making his fire protect them from Ryujin Jakka's fire. Although the old man's Bankai is legendary on so many levels of strength, but the Shikai itself is considered to be terrifying force, and there is no doubt that the old man had dozens of Shikai's level techniques, of which we unfortunately have seen only few of them. And now we move to the second place, the real Shikai of Ichigo, Zangetsu. I have previously talked about Ichigo's strength in 3 videos. The real Shikai in a normal state can be considered as Ichigo's liberating power in a resting state, meaning Ichigo doesn't use Shiro or Osan's power to their fullest. However, when we talk about the Horn of Salvation, here we are talking about another level of strength. In this form, Ichigo awakens his Shinigami power in its liberated form. In the form of Horn of Salvation, we are talking about the fact that Ichigo is in control of his powers while it's liberated. So the power level is high, and we only notice that when Ichigo went to wake up Shiro, he destroyed Yhwach's palace, and for attack the Getsuga Tensho of Ichigo, it made Yhwach draw another sword. And by the way, those white swords he had, one of them was the same one with which he cut the old man into half, without mentioning the Granrai Zero he performed against Yhwach. Ichimonji. The power of this Shikai is extraordinary. To know just how powerful it is, you must know that the Bankai itself is based on this Shikai. The Bankai wouldn't activate its ability without Ichimonji ink. The thing that scared me the most about Ichimonji was that it could take all the darkness of beings, whether dead or alive, Quincy or Shinigami, even animals, everything. Just imagine with me how much spiritual power this Shikai would need to do all of this. And this is without mentioning the basic ability that makes it the strongest, which is to remove names. A technique without a name, useless. A sword or a nameless Zanpakuto will be useless. A person without a name will become definitely nobody. Thus, Urahara stood helpless in front of this ability. Ichibi was able to eliminate Urahara before even activate his Bankai, which is considered merely the conclusion of the Shikai ability by adding a new name, because the main power found in the Shikai is to remove the name completely. That's why I believe that in the Shikai category, Ichimonji is the strongest, and in the Bankai category, Zanka no Tachi is the strongest. So guys, this is my list of the 8th strongest Shikai in Bleach. What about you? And if you agree with mine, give me 2 more Shikai to complete a list of 10 strongest Shikai in Bleach. And see you guys in my next video.